So, number one, I just want to make sure that everyone's clear that I'm not an expert on this stuff. I have a theology degree. So, I don't want everyone to think that I'm some pompous, elitist college boy. So keep that in mind. There's always room for doubt. I do have the degree, but, it doesn't make me it doesn't make me an all-knowing, type of guy, Second thing is, when I listened to the last podcast, I said, and you know what I mean about 1,000,000 times. And it was funny because my parents just listened to the podcast and my dad came down and he's like, can I give you some advice? And I was like, sure. He goes, you said, and you know what I mean a lot. I said, yeah. And it was funny because he said, well, I used to do that too all the time. And it's because he was an English teacher at one point. And it's because we're teachers. So when I'm teaching, usually about a half an hour into teaching, especially in the prison, I get these blank stares.
You're trying to elicit a response, right? It's like an open-ended, it's like leaving it open-ended. You're trying to poke and prod so that the other side of the conversation's like, okay, yeah, I do get that, and here's why, and blah, blah, blah. I will say, though, when I first got into podcasting, I would say and and I still do it sometimes, but it took me listening to myself and, of course, having to edit myself, which really is the ultimate catalyst for changing the way that you speak into a microphone. It took me a number of times to do that, so don't come down too hard on yourself for that. You don't even realize you're doing it until you hear yourself back, and then you go, oh, God, I say that a lot.
It's true. It's either I hear myself back or someone reams me out for it on a post.
Poor guy. Your dad got on you with that one, huh?
My old man.
Your own father is like,
He's like, son, listen up. You're going to be on the radio. Here's how it's going to be. But there was also, I did make a mistake last time I was on, and I wanted to clear that up right off the bat. I was referring to, I think I mentioned the Malleus Maleficarum as the book that titled all the demons and had all the names and stuff. That was wrong. That was a mistake. So I'm sure there's a few armchair theologians out there who are all over that. The Malleus Maleficarum is, I think, translated as Witch's Hammer. And it was a book about witchcraft. And it's really considered the foremost authority on witchcraft. It was Colin de Plancy who wrote a book. And the name escapes me at the moment, but it was more or less like a morbid dictionary. And that's where, right. And what's funny about it is that he did it as, it was kind of tongue in cheek. It was more or less, well, we have hell and we have ranks, so let's give them titles and names, and I'm sure there was some thought put into it. It wasn't just a funny book.
Right.
But it was, I think it was meant to be somewhat tongue in cheek. But Colin de Plancy wrote that book that I was referring to in the last episode that had all the names and, their jobs in hell and the descriptions of what they looked like and things like that. And so that picture I sent you, which was awesome, by the way, of that dude, night owl person riding a wolf, that's de Plancy's work.
Yeah, you'll have to send me another one of your favorites so that we can put that up for part 2 as the episode image. May as well keep it all conformed, right?
Yeah, I got a lot of favorites.
Yeah, see, I knew you would. I'm like, well, I liked using that last card, so we'll just go with another card this time for the image. You can't beat it.
Yeah, so just to be clear, it was, it's Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. So it's like the, pseudo-monarch, the demons, it's a parody, basically. The Pseudomonarchia in Latin meaning, false monarchy, of demons. And it was, Colin de Plancy. And, like I said, the Malleus Maleficarum, Hammer of Witches, written by Heinrich Kramer. And that's a book worth looking up if you're into witchcraft, because that is the foremost authority. And it has a lot to do with devils and demons, and there's a lot of overlap, which is why I think I made the mistake in the first place. But to be honest with you, it's hard to keep track of all these books because they all have Latin names. It's like if you're going to do primary source work, you got to find the Latin book, and then you got to find a decent translation, and somewhere in between lies a good amount of information.
Was your football-headed, 3.5 foot tall, iguana-looking demon listed anywhere in any of these books? Is there anything close to what you saw?
Not even close. And I didn't get any emails responding to it.
Really?
You know what's funny, too? Because I mentioned it to my mom, because as soon as my mom found out I was on a podcast, she does what moms do. And she was like, oh, my God. Because I've also, I mentioned before that I'm a recovering addict, so I've become kind of like this spokesperson in Rhode Island for recovery. And I've done a few speaking engagements here and there, and she's all excited when I do things like that. But I don't really have, an avenue to vent my passion, which is this. And I found one. Thankfully, you let me on your show. So when she found out that I was doing something like this, she listened to it, and she remembers me, apparently, telling her about this thing that I saw.
Oh my gosh.
I know, and I don't remember telling her. I was like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, wasn't it like some kind of elf? I'm like, I don't know if elf's the word,
You're like, it was an angry, ugly elf.
Yeah. Right.
What did she say? Does she remember that you were distraught or crying or what?
No, because she was asleep the whole time it was going on. And, I was very silent. I just, saw what I saw, threw my head under the covers, saw it again, whipped the alligator on it, and it was gone. And, I guess I just went back to sleep.
Right. But once you mentioned, you must have mentioned something to her. And you just said it very matter of fact then, huh? Like, I saw this.
Yes. I must have said something like, did you see that this morning? There was a little guy in front of the, TV, and she must have been like, oh, what do you mean, like an elf or something? And I can't recall the conversation. So if she remembers something, I'm going to prod her on that a little bit and be like, hey, what did I actually say? Do you remember this conversation?
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting to get a little bit more out of your mom about that. And everybody, if you haven't listened to, that was pretty very early on in our conversation, I believe, in episode 84, Thrones, Fates, and Nightmares, was his first round on John Paul's, and he described a terrifying little creature that he saw when he was 10, right?
That's it. That's it in a nutshell, and it was horrifying.
Yeah, that's the nice way to put it. A little creature. Oh, you drew a picture of it?
A very crude one. I want to draw a better one, but
maybe we need to use that as the episode image.
I drew it on the back of like a notebook, so it's so bad.
You're like, it's on the back of a used Kleenex. I'm sorry. I'll be like, it's all right. We'll just use it. Put some color in there. It's all good.
I was doodling, and I pointed at my friend. We were in a meeting, and it was all quiet. And he saw me drawing it, and his eyes got all close together. We're like, what the hell are you drawing? And like I mouthed to him across the table, I saw that.
He's probably like, John Paul, are you okay?
His eyes just went wicked wide.
Yeah. He's like, do you want to talk about something?
I was like, not recently, but a long time ago.
Man. Yeah, the description of that, I remember the bullet points, and then didn't it had fairly sharp teeth, or you don't remember the teeth? No, sorry. See, like my memory is fading so quickly now. See, the memory of witnesses fades so fast. But it waved at you at the end, right? It's like, bye, John Paul.
Oh yeah,
enjoy never sleeping again.
Basically. Yep, it gave me a solid little wave, it gave me a grin, and then it was off on its merry little tubby way.
He's like, peace. Oh yeah, that fat tummy. Oh yeah, I remember. That was the part I kept coming back to, like, what is it eating? Why is it fat? What in the world does a little 3.5 foot tall demon eat? Souls, of course. Delicious souls. Yeah. The Twinkies came back, so he's eating Twinkies and souls.
Maybe that's why he hasn't showed up in a while.
He's distracted.
I hope so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, right? Yeah, be all good on that.
You know, it's funny because while we're talking about confirmation experiences, I was listening to, I don't know if it was your last episode or the one before. The one before, the Gambit, what was it? I can't remember the exact title. And, I don't know if I'm allowed to say other guest names or not, but there was a guy on there from Indy. Was it Nick from Indiana?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And, I don't know, when he was talking, I got this really, intense impression of him and like what kind of guy he is. And like, and then he started telling the story about the Ouija board, and he mentioned that it may have spelled out a demon's name. And I kept rewinding it, and it sounded, and I remember him saying like, "Don't say it out loud," which was,
and in the end, then he said it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did he say a name that was?
He did, and I'm trying to decipher it, but he didn't give a spelling. It sounded like either like Germer or Dermer or Murmur or something like that. And I've been like looking for something similar, for a while, you know. I was like, "Whoa, what is this guy seeing?" And sorry, I just dropped it.
That's okay. It's funny you brought Nick up because a couple hours before I got on with you, I threw it out there again on Facebook. Said, "Hey, John Paul's coming back on if you have any questions." And actually, Nick popped on the thread, and he said, and I don't know if you caught his whole his call, but he said there's something that I haven't really shared like fully yet, but he's kind of messaged me about it back and forth, and it has to do with what he thinks is a demonic entity. And the last time that we were kind of planning to talk about this demonic entity, and I don't know if it's in his house or I think it might be out in the woods, I'm not exactly sure, but he had an ATV accident like the very next day or the day after that or something. And it's like every time he tries to talk about that, something kind of bad happens to him. So he was wanting to know what you thought about that situation.
Well, it's so, based on what I heard him say, I did find a demon. I think I found one named Murmur. And I found one named Furfur. So I couldn't, you know.
Yeah,
like I said,
I'll have to ask him, and of course he's going to listen to this. So I'm going to write that down. Furfur and Murmur, both you found.
Right.
Okay.
Those I found as demons, and I know that Furfur is, according to Duplancy, a count of hell, commanding 26 legions of demons. There's nothing special about Furfur. Murmur, on the other hand, I think was a little bit more intense of a deity, and I had it written down somewhere, but I can't find it. If I find it later in the show, I actually circled it and I wrote Nick from Indiana and like
cool.
Big question mark. Yeah, because
that is very cool that you caught that, John Paul. Thank you.
Oh, that's right. Murmur was a he was a member of the Fates. That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah, he wasn't just a regular demon. He was a kind of a high level
messing with a biggie, huh?
Yeah, so I would love to know the exact spelling of it, you know, just so, I mean, at least I can look it up in Duplancy's book, which I've since purchased. So, you know, and we could go from there anyway, but, yeah, I mean, Ouija boards, they would have to spell it out, so.
So is there, I mean, if they spell it out and then you say it out loud, is that in fact giving it more power?
No, not at all.
Not at all. That is a myth.
Yeah, and knowing a demon's name is a good thing. That's one of the things the movies usually get right. They usually say, "Tell me your name," and you know, having the name of the demon does grant you some power. But that's a whole another, I guess, creative information we're talking about. You know, when it comes to demons, and then you do have to, there's two thoughts. Like this, you do have to invite them away. You do have to invite them in a way. Although there are some cases where there's just, you know, chaos in people's houses and poltergeists. And lots of like demonic activity going on, and and then there are cases with, like I said, about the clean demons, where I can't imagine like a priest playing with a Ouija board. So, they weren't invited in. So there's some contradiction in the book that I was reading about it, where like on one hand you do have to allow them in, and on one hand you don't have to allow them in. But simply saying their name wouldn't have anything, they wouldn't have to do it. But on the flip side, if you do some research online, you're going to find out how to summon a demon and all this other bull crap. And even in some of the books I have, they talk about like, going to a crossroads at midnight and slaughtering a chicken and burying it. Yeah. And then you say the demon's name, and supposedly he's yours for 20 years and all that type of stuff. But the reality is, all you have to do is quietly accept the demon. You don't have to go through an elaborate ritual. That's not how it's done. That's more magic and more divination type stuff. Right.
But demon's like, just leave the chicken alone, man. I'll join you.
Right. If you really wanted to see a demon, I really do. All you would have to do is ask to see one. Is contact it, maybe reach out to it, or meditate on it in some way, shape, or form, and in that way you're opening yourself up to it. You don't have to go through some elaborate process.
Now this is a little bit morbid, but is it an assumption that a demon is just always on call for anybody because that's just what they like to do? I mean, or are they waiting for the ones that are a little bit more damaged, or they're depressed, or whatever their specific problem at the time might be, maybe drugs or alcohol or depression? Or can the happiest person on the planet sit down and meditate for 20 minutes and be like, demons, come see me, and it'll happen just as easily?
That's a really tough question. I tend to think that the really happiest person in the world could summon a demon in that way. I don't think that they would just come randomly pop up and pick at you. Because remember, there is cycles to this, right? Mm-hmm. So there's demonic infestation, poltergeist activity, things like that. So, for example, Amityville, right? The people who moved in afterwards and everyone ever since has never experienced anything. But usually they call this a period of dormancy, so the house can still be haunted. It's just that maybe the family has faith or something and the demons can't find an angle to get in. So, are they waiting to be summoned? I don't think so. I think they just kind of, like I said, prowl the earth, and if you happen to be in the right place at the right time, you're going to get one. And I do think because, they had that knowledge of basically the beginning of time, they could pass themselves off as anything they wanted to. They could pretend to be a different demon. And if, the numbers are right, which who knows, they're probably not, but there could be a whole mess of them out there. So, if you wanted to, you could probably, get one to help you do something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why I would want to, but I know why some people would want to. I'm sure in some cases. Look, I guess this might sound more, but I've thought about it. I wonder if I could sick a demon on this guy. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Or something like that. Or I wonder what would happen if I really took away everything in my room that's protecting me, and the crucifixes and the holy water and the things like that, and I actually started thinking about this stuff and maybe inviting some of these things into my life. And I don't think I would maybe meditate on a specific name. I think I would more or less meditate on the idea of devils, demons, and Satan. And I think ultimately that would get you a result. I don't think you can summon specific demons. I think it's just, wherever you are, right place, right time.
It's interesting to think of, I know we referenced this movie in your first episode, but Constantine, when he does end up going down to hell, and there are the demons they have half of their heads gone, and they're horrible looking, right? And they're demons. Yeah. They're in hell. That's what they're supposed to look like. It's just, after what you saw when you were 10, I guess these things just literally, like you said, they come in all sizes and shapes, and I suppose they just choose to look like that. But again, I know this came up in your first episode. It was pretty messed up for that little dude to be like, yeah, this is what little John Paul's gonna see tonight. It's so messed up. I mean, if you had to choose, little man, you are screwed up for doing that to a 10-year-old. So.
And it's funny because I did, and I don't want to talk too much about it because the guy seemed pretty secretive, but I did get an email about from a guy from out of the country, from Europe actually, and he saw someone disappear right in front of him in a very crowded place. Like there was no way for this guy to get out without brushing past him, basically. And, the guy, I said, again, I'm going to snap my fingers every time I say it. Lobian dogs. He saw this guy disappear, and it was so profound to him that it changed his life, really. And he wrote this 20-page poem about it, and he sent it to me, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And he even gave me some translations of words.
So he sends you the email, and so in the onset, he thought it was a person. Had he had contact with this person or entity? Was he talking to it, or he was just eyes fixed, and then it just poof, gone?
Yeah, yep. He was in a coffee shop, and they caught eyes, and he looked a little disheveled, if I believe. I don't want to. I haven't read the story recently. I just kind of read through it. It was a lot of material that he sent me. But more or less, they looked at each other, and, he looked away, and he looked back, and he was gone. Gone in a matter of seconds.
Wow.
And
but what did it mean to him? I mean, what did he take it? He took it to be something bad and not something good?
I think he took it. I think it altered his reality is what it did, and it made him open to things like this. Like if someone can disappear, then was that person even a person? And
okay, I gotcha. I just wasn't sure if he was trying to see if, was that a demon or, okay. It just in general, it just changed his whole perception, which I can completely understand that, and so could you. Right. It's the same thing for you. You're like, yep, saw the one thing, and it changes your life. It only takes a few seconds. Yours was way too long, by the way, but mine was only a few seconds, and it sounds like this gentleman's was as well. But that's all it takes.
That's all it takes, and it changed his complete worldview. And I think the idea of it being a demon probably crossed his mind, and that's why he decided. Send me an email, and hopefully I can have a conversation with them, and this could easily go in the book as a chapter or something.
Absolutely, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was really cool to get that first email. That was the first one I had gotten on that account, so I was really happy about that.
Good, and let's throw out that tagline. I like that, confirmation experiences, and you are writing a book. Let's remind everybody about that. And you are looking for original stories and reports and incidents of these types of things, right?
Yeah. And I'm looking to do this from an academic standpoint, meaning that I would love the book to be used in a classroom setting. I really would. I think that when I studied theology, we never talked about this stuff. And I think that if there were a textbook, that would, and I'm sure it could serve as general reading as well. But if there were a textbook that just broke things down and said, well, here are some various experiences that we know have happened from witness accounts, and then give the experience, and then afterwards you give more or less an academic theological explanation for the experience. What could have this been? What could have this meant? And tie it in to the rest of the book, in a nice little bow. But that's what I'm looking to do. I'm not looking to like write a book and make a bunch of money. I want to publish something that can be used, even if it would just ended up being in a scholarly journal or something like that. I think that would be fantastic.
Keep those correspondences coming through, folks, because I go fishing every week. Everybody knows that. I'm always fishing because you never know what something might spark in someone's mind, and they're like, "Oh God, you know what? I do remember something back when I was a kid," and sometimes that's all it takes. And others like us will never forget what happened to us, and it's why really we do what we do. It lights a fire and it keeps it lit your whole life. So I think it's funny that you said that there really isn't a book to encompass all of it. Is it almost, I know that actual possessions and having to do exorcisms are very few and far between, actual cases. But why would it be taboo almost to put that into a book and encompass it, like you said, in a nice big bow along with the history and cite cases and the whole thing? Why wouldn't that already be in existence?
That's another really good question. I don't know. Part of me agrees with you. Like, why doesn't this exist? If you were a Catholic priest or a Catholic clergyman of high standing, right? You would want the public to know that, look, evil is a reality, and this can happen, and it would scare people and bring people to church. On the other hand, maybe they don't want people to know that it happens. But I can't figure out why they wouldn't want people to know. I mean, the only reason I can think of as to why they would not want people to know is A, because it's happening a lot. Okay, that would be one answer, is that, the Vatican is sanctioning exorcisms maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And it's happening so much, and that might really freak people out. The other thing is the idea of thought forms, right? You guys have talked about that on your show. You have. Mm-hmm. And religion, to me, is like the ultimate tulpa. It's the ultimate thought form. If you believe that your mind can create certain things, then what about 1 billion minds focusing on one thing?
Yeah.
So if this book, were promulgated and people started reading it, it could manifest itself into something horrific, Yeah,
a long time ago, I don't know if you heard this episode. I have no idea what number it was. A long time ago, it was on one of the End of the Randoms, and me and Ryan and Sam were talking about tulpas, and I'm like, you know what? We're going to create an End of the Fray tulpa. That's what we're going to do. So let's totally construct this thing, and everybody's going to think about it every single week, and we're going to talk about it every week, and that died really quick, no pun intended. Or maybe it is intended, because people are emailing me like, no, don't do that.
I do remember that episode.
Oh, man. Yeah, that actually died the second I think we hit the end call. I don't think any of us really talked about it again, because I think we knew it wasn't probably such a good idea. So, yeah, it's just so...
Maybe that's it, It's just not a good idea. If there's people out there thinking about it, then it might add more power.
And that does make a lot of sense, what you said about maybe that's why an official Vatican book hasn't come out or something, right? Like citing all their cases, because we would crap ourselves if we knew how many actual cases of possession they've had to go out and clear. So
exactly.
I mean, we would find it fascinating, of course, but
right.
A lot of people would be, but here's the thing though also, and I'm going to get emails for this one. Oh, sweet Lord. But look, churches need money, and churches like money. They like donations, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not talking any crap here, people. That's just the truth. Hey, everybody needs money to keep the lights on. I totally get it. But like you were saying, you're like, well, if you scare them just enough to get them in there, hey, more money for the church. I don't know.
Whip up some indulgence money,
man. Like, hey, love your soul? Come on in, give us 10%.
Although I guess it could backfire too, and it could really, really freak people out to the point where they don't want anything to do with Christianity anymore.
They're like in their basement crying in the dark, like just sucking on a binky and holding their blanket. Yeah.
Right. This is happening.
Yeah. Hey, it could easily happen. All it takes is an ID4 ship to go over the sky. You're like, well, there goes half of humanity's mind. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you watched that show, The Leftovers, but what a great show, right?
You know what is so weird that you just mentioned that, because just 2 nights ago, I was watching a movie on my DVR, just in the background, and I'm doing housework or whatever, and I paused it to go upstairs and work on some laundry or something, and I could hear that if you pause the DVR long enough, it'll kick you out of that and just go to whatever's on that channel on TV.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to it upstairs, and I had already gotten into the show before I even came downstairs. I was listening to for like 15 minutes, and I'm recognizing a couple of the voices, and I walked downstairs, and I kept watching for another 20 minutes before I actually hit info, and it was The Leftovers. But I want to start from the beginning, because I was hooked. I didn't even know what the heck I was watching, but I was sitting here going, wow, this is really good. And I hit info. I'm like, The Leftovers.
You've got to watch it. I mean, just for the fact that if something like that happened, I'm not going to talk about the premise. I'll use demonology as an example. If Satan showed up, people would lose their marbles, like, completely.
Yeah. I agree.
And that's what this show is really about. Something happens and people lose their marbles.
See, but people forget that about the whole alien thing. They're always like, oh, could people handle it if the aliens landed on the line? Because it would inevitably come up with our humanity, religion, all of that would come up. It's not just, oh, it's cute little space aliens. It means it changes everything for us.
It does. Absolutely does.
Yeah, and now everybody would go bonkers in that respect too. I'm sorry, but it just would be a melee.
They would be completely bonkers in that. Yeah, I mean, it would change. I mean, when something happens to me and it changes my perception, that happened over a long period of time, and it was one of those things where I played with for years. Did this really happen? Did this not happen? And you're familiar with that, and but to see, like ID4 ships coming over the White House, that would totally, people would be committing suicide. It would be 100%. Mayhem.
What was that, John Paul? It was around the year 2000 with the. I don't mean to laugh. I'm sorry, but I just grin every time I think about this. What was the people in the desert that were going up on that big rock, and it was like, what was it, midnight or noon or the change of the day, whatever it was? They were going to jump off that big rock in the desert because a portal was going to open up. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do remember that.
What was that? I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Did people actually jump? I don't remember. I don't mean to laugh about people's ridiculous decisions that killed themselves, these are the ideas, folks.
I do remember that vaguely. It's so many things like that happen.
Yeah. Like, hey, I'm not jumping off a rock. I'm jumping into a portal here, people. Yeah. I'm good. Don't look at me like I'm crazy.
Think of the heavens. Do you remember the Heaven's Gate cult?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. I mean, insanity at the highest levels. I remember listening to a podcast about a guy who was actually kicked out. His wife was allowed to stay in, but he didn't.
How was he kicked out? How did he get kicked out of that?
He didn't conform. And, he didn't
He's
conform.
Lucky they didn't just bury him in the backyard or something.
I guess he escaped with his life, yes.
Jeez.
And, but his wife divorced
his lady stayed? Oh, she divorced him.
Yep, she divorced him, and she stayed, and she died with
my gosh.
his suicide. She drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. And
I didn't know for the longest time that drinking the Kool-Aid was tied to that. I felt really ridiculous when I finally realized that. Drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't know where I thought it came from. I guess it didn't go past that in my tiny little gray matter. But when I read that, I was like, oh my God, of course that's where that came from. Drinking the Kool-Aid, people. Yeah. Yep,
drink the Kool-Aid and put 50 cents in your pocket.
That's right, yeah. You can put them over your eyes when you're passed so you can get into your...
No, that wasn't even it. You know that, right?
What's that?
I think they had $1.50 or $1.25 in their pocket.
No kidding.
That was the fare to get on the spaceship.
It was $1.25 or $1.50.
Yeah, like $1.50, like our money, English money.
Yeah, of course, because that's totally
people committing suicide. But
yeah, it's quadruple thousand the value of what it is here on Earth. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's priceless to them. They're like, "Do you take Capital One?"
If I were in that cult and I bought it, I think that would be my turning point. At the very end when he said, "You're going to need $1.25 to board the ship," I'd be like, "Wait a minute."
Like, what's in your wallet? What? What in the world? I didn't realize that was part of it. I think maybe there needs to be a show on that because
If you did a show on cults, you would have a blast. The Heaven's Gate cult and the one with David Koresh out there, the Branch Davidians, and those guys are all tied to. Obviously, they're tied to religion. They're fringe groups, which brings me nicely to a point that I'd like to make.
Sorry, we haven't even touched on your entire email, the whole reason we were doing this call, but that's cool because it's how we roll. So go ahead.
This is how we do it.
Yeah.
I think that was a song. So anyway,
it is.
This guy, I forgot what I was talking about, Shannon.
The tie-in with, oh damn. We were just, I just screwed you up. We had a segue and I messed it up for you. What were we just talking about? The money? And the cults. Davidians. Yes.
Yeah, so the cults and various cults and various offshoots of so-called Christianity. So anything that's not Catholic is Protestant. Protestant means to protest. And that's not a pejorative term. I'm not saying that in a mean way. So things, and I'm not trying to equate, Baptists and Lutherans with the Branch Davidians. I'm just saying this is how it happens. It snowballs. And people get their own ideas and their own interpretations of what the Bible says or what certain holy books say, and they run with it. And they get people to go along with it. I mean, Jim Jones and his whole thing. And I mean, the whole idea of cults and being tied to religion would be a fascinating topic for you to cover at some point if you could find someone with the knowledge to do.
You're hired, buddy. There you go. I'm just kidding.
That's my next thing.
You're like, great, more research for me.
That's all I do. It's like my fun thing to do is research.
I know. I hear you. Okay, so I know we're totally off track, but hey, since we're already there, what do you think of the whole end times and when is the end times and when should we be scared, if we should be scared, and what is that going to look like? Yeah,
so people are obsessed with that nowadays. It's in movies, it's in television, it's in books. People are, if anything, they're creating it. Personally, I believe my scientific heart weighs out in this, and I believe in the reality of the polar ice caps melting and that being our ultimate demise in some way, shape, or form. And I believe in population increase. I think by the time I'm 63, 65 years old, there could potentially be 35, 40 billion people on the planet, which means your town would look like Calcutta. And, that's probably what it's going to look like. As far as the biblical end times, there's supposed to be an Antichrist, who is not Satan. A lot of people get that confused. It's not Satan. He's an associate, I guess, of Satan, who comes to kind of usher in the end times. And it would look probably a lot what things look like today. There would be a lot of chaos. Probably magnified by 10, though, So a lot of chaos, a lot of war, a lot of misrepresentation, a lot of weird media tricks and tropes and gambits.
Fake news sites and stuff, huh? See, people?
Right.
See, now I've been saying for a long time, we need a good apocalypse, but I want a really cool one, like a zombie apocalypse, or, you know, the robots, Skynet comes through and we're just battling it out. Of course, Arnold will save us all, and then we'll be like, hey, come on, dude, you know. Yeah,
well, if
Arnold.
the apocalypse of John, you know, the Revelation, if that's how it's all going to go down, then that's going to be the most horrific thing you'll ever see in your life.
Okay, what's that apocalypse? I'm not familiar.
So that's Revelation.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You know, that's the four horsemen.
Right.
That's the cherubim and the blowing of trumpets and seeing these beings that are 13 feet tall coming out of the sky. And
that's pretty cool. I don't know. I'm ready for that.
Yeah,
talk about a confirmation experience. and very much in need of adult diapers.
Yes, exactly. It'd be a lot of I think even if you're not Catholic or Christian, you should still read the book of Revelation just for the fear factor. Just for the horror story factor.
It's wonderful.
It reads like a horror story. It really does. Now, in the Apocrypha, which I think I explained in the last podcast, is the books that didn't make it into the Bible. There are alternate versions of the end times. And I think they took John's version because it was so scary. Because there's an apocalypse of, I think Peter, maybe? Don't quote me on that. And his apocalypse story, or Revelation story, is so simple. It's basically him kind of floating around with an angel, and it shows what happens to someone bad when they die, and it shows what happens to someone good when they die. And it was just this, you know, little thing, and it was very short. But you know, Revelation, you know, according to John, it was. I mean, you gotta read it. It's just so full of imagery. And look, 95% of the Bible is allegory. And I know when I say that, probably more. And for some reason, people think this is a new thing. They keep saying, oh, you know, the Bible is 95% allegory. Like, that's a new thing. St. Augustine said that in the 4th century. Okay?
You're like, get over yourself, people.
Right. You're like, well, they keep changing their minds, and now they think the Bible's all allegory. Yeah. 4th century, St. Augustine, right before the fall of Rome, you know, and when the Germanic tribes were at the gates, basically, you know, he was saying this is allegory, and I think Thomas Aquinas also agreed with him that it is allegory, because ultimately, Shannon, all this stuff comes, and you know from the notes that I sent you, this all comes from myths, legends, and stories, word of mouth, things like that. That's where it all comes from.
Yeah, so, all right, let's try to get into some of what you sent me, which is fascinating, by the way. Let's see here. Some of the first things that I highlighted. The early gods were chaotic. There wasn't one good or one bad. They were all just formed. It's a fascinating way to think about it. They just came to be. Yeah. They were just there, just came
to be, right? And they came to be. And the point of me sending you that timeline and that history was because I don't want to exclude people who don't believe in God and who don't believe in the devil from this podcast. Because from reading those notes, you should get a very clear example that this has been around for 5,000 years, right? So, the Enema Elish was written maybe 2000 BCE. That's when they're figuring. So, you know, maybe 3000 BCE is roughly when they think humans inhabited the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley. And up until that point, stories were probably word of mouth until someone decided to write things down. And their language was cuneiform, which is kind of like hieroglyphics. It's very a blocky type language. And they started writing things down. And the first thing they wrote down was a theogony and a cosmology, because that's what people do. They want to know, where am I from? How did this happen? How did I get here? You know, so a cosmology is a story about how things came to be, and a theogony is a story of how the gods came to be and procreated, so to speak. And that's the first thing. I mean, I don't know if that's the first thing they wrote. I can't say that definitively, but that's the first thing they wrote.
I have a kind of a random question for you, and I don't even know if it's even valid or interesting in any way. But, and it does stem again from some of the movies that I've watched and some of the things that I've read. And these are just articles. It's not like this is something, from a library or something you would read scholarly wise. So some of the first two that you said inhabited the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley was the Sumerians and the Akkadians.
Yeah.
The Sumerians are people that we hear about all the time with ties to aliens and astrology. What does that have any tie-in to what we're talking about today?
Possibly. I don't think that modern people give ancient people enough credit, right? Mm-hmm. So we're always caught, in books especially, they're always talking about primitive man and primitive this and primitive that. And if you look at the pyramids, they're not primitive.
Yeah, it's a wrong word to be using. I completely agree.
That's a sophisticated thing,
Come on, John Paul, the aliens built that stuff.
I know. People tell me that stuff. People are like, oh, aliens built the pyramid. I said, okay.
Anti-gravity, baby, what?
I said, so what's more likely? 1 billion or 1 million slaves hauling rocks up the side of this thing, under the command of some pharaoh, or aliens. It's just logically.
You have to see the picture of Giorgio Tsoukalos right now with his hands up on the Discover Travel or History Channel. Aliens, right? That's always the answer. Aliens with the hair standing up and just got to put that in everybody's mind right now. Yeah,
if enough people to do anything, they can do anything, and then, like I said, they weren't as crude as we think they were.
Right. They could use pulleys and levers and big logs to roll things around, and
they had plenty of
brains. Oh my goodness, they had brains.
They had brains, and they had thousands or millions of slaves to do their work. Just like building the Great Wall, where they just bury the bodies in the wall. No one ever says the Great Wall was built by aliens.
Yeah, all that gore from the bodies makes great mortar. I mean, just natural mortar. You're like, he fell. Let's just make him part of the wall.
It's all good.
Yeah, man. Save on the materials when you can.
Right. It's just logically, it just makes sense that people would do this. And, as opposed to E.T. coming down and doing it. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen. Obviously, I have no friggin' idea.
Right.
But, it can just as easily be argued that when people see flying men and 15-foot tall humans with jackal heads, that they could have been seeing demons, not aliens.
Yeah, and that should be a whole nother show, by the way. Like trying to tie in that, not trying to tie it in, that sounds really bad, but exploring the idea that any kind of an infestation or an early possession is at all correlated with alien abduction, because that does come up. Poltergeist activity, and then you have missing time, and that's a whole nother can of worms. So
okay. Yeah, it's true. It's funny. I was watching this documentary on Netflix. I think it's called Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs.
I'm gonna write that down.
Friggin' hysterical, Shannon.
Is it?
Yeah, I heard the guys on the Whatcast talking about it. They did a whole show on it. This guy's got so much footage of UFOs over Monterey Bay in California. Huh. And like really good footage.
No kidding.
And he's this really eccentric guy. And at first you're thinking, like, this guy's a loon. And then you begin to realize that he's just some dude. He's like running around and wearing T-shirts, and his butt crack's always hanging out because his pants don't fit.
Is he claiming that he calls the craft in?
No, he's just filming them, and he gives them weird names like Eggman or the flying pizza slice, because one of the things he has on film looks like a friggin' Star Destroyer from Star Wars. It's ridiculous.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, you got to check out this documentary.
Why
And at one
have
point,
I not? I've never heard anything about this guy.
neither have I. I just, like I said, I listened to that
Oh,
episode, the
all right.
Whatcast. I turned on Netflix, and there it was. And it's funny because the whole time the guy's doing the documentary, he's wondering, is this guy nuts or what? And then they see a UFO while he's filming the
Oh,
documentary.
boy. Is the guy freaking out that's shooting the documentary then?
Yes, yeah. He's like, there's one right there. And the documentary shooter is like, where? I don't see anything.
Oh.
And then he's like, holy crap.
I will watch that when we hang up because I got the old Netflix. I'm always looking for good stuff on Netflix.
Great. He's got clips of, I think, like something like 25 black helicopters in the middle of the day flying over Monterey, like for no reason, you know. It's just really creepy stuff.
Monterey's on the coast, right? PCH?
Yeah, I think so.
See, man, USOs. I was just talking about those.
Yeah,
There's just the underwater bases. That's all. It's really simple. Yeah.
They do mention that.
the old USOs. It's very simply explained. I want to see a friggin' UFO. That's great. That's really cool. See,
I want to see it. I mean, I want to see another demon.
I was just going to say, I'm good on I was just going to say that. John Paul, you want to see it again?
Not that one. I want to see.
All right.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say this.
No, what? Okay, so what's your favorite demon? Let's play a game. Which one do you want to see then? I mean, if you had to pick one, or you could pick one, I should say.
I guess I would want to meet Satan, to be honest with you.
Whoa, dude, going all out. Is that because you would want to have enough time to ask him questions?
Absolutely. I would want to have a conversation with the man himself.
What sorts of things do you think you would ask, or is that a little too personal?
I would ask him everything.
Is it like big creation stuff and
dude,
how you duking it out with your other half? And
I would want to know, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Why did this happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would want to know. Tell me. What was it like?
What's the part that I highlighted here that I loved? Okay, I skipped a little bit here, but it's okay because this whole entire thing is just nothing but just all over the place. Okay, so I highlighted this from your email that you sent me. In the Quran, verse 6, chapter 7, verse 6, Roman numerals, yay, Shannon. Satan says, because thou hast thrown me off the correct path, I shall lay in wait for the humans on the straight track. That gives you chills when you read that. Satan continues to tell God that he will attack humanity from all sides, and we will never see him coming. That end part right there. He says, well, hey, if you want to throw me off the correct path, I shall lie in wait for the humans on the straight track. He's like, all right, I have my ways.
And that's so similar to the Christian mythos. And the major monotheistic religions, they'll do that to you. The Muslims, Catholics, Jews, and Jews isn't a pejorative term. Mm-hmm. They all fall under the category of being from the Davidic line. The Abrahamic tradition. So they all come from the same place. So it would make sense that this idea of the devil permeates all three. Yeah, and I mean, that's the case that I was making. Like, no matter what religion you are, right? So supposedly there's 1 billion Catholics out there, and there's 1 billion Muslims, and I don't know how many Jews there are, but there's probably close to 1 billion, you consider Eastern religions, and Buddhism, and Shintoism, and Taoism, and Hinduism, and I think there's maybe 1 billion Hindus in the world. I'm going to have to guess that 5 billion of the 7 billion people on the planet believe in God in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And the other two I like to split into categories of spiritualists and atheists.
And the chicken sacrificers, right?
Yeah, right. And the funny thing about atheists, to me, is that God kind of has to be real for them to have any validity. When you think about it, right?
Right.
Like, you don't believe in God, you're taking a stance of defiance. You're saying, I don't believe in God. God reveals himself and you say, I don't believe in you. And that's atheism. Or you're just saying, the whole thing is horse apples. Seeing as though I'm not allowed to swear, that's the best thing.
We're both doing really well, by the way.
I think so.
Last time we were just on fire, dude. That's right. Everyone's writing me like, well, Shannon, bravo on breaking your New Year's resolutions. Of course, part of me was like, you know what, go suck on some horse apples.
Yeah.
But I did say that. I did say that I wasn't going to use curse words on Into the Fray, at least for the year. Next year's a whole nother story, people. I'm just kidding.
That's it. Take it back next year. That guy was
right. People are pretty brave behind their computers. You know this. I want to see them get behind a microphone and put their face online one of these days.
I found out that they're brave. I think the guy wrote like a 5-page tweet about my flaws and how I say too much.
You're like, oh, fellow theologian.
I'm like, oh, okay. Where'd you matriculate? It's like, I'm not going to sit and listen. Like, I never engage in conversation with people like that because most of the time, they're getting their undergraduate degree from Wikipedia University.
Was that on my website?
It was on your, the Insider one, the Insider website.
I get the emails. I saw emails.
Oh yeah, he tears me up. And I said something at the end like, oh, thanks for the constructive criticism / trolling. And that was it.
Yeah, I just always, people just have to remember it's so easy to do that, but I would implore you to start a podcast, give it a shot, or do an interview.
Exactly.
Where you're not used to speaking, and you're speaking about something you really are passionate about. And see how well you do your first try. So I just like to remind people about that before you send emails or make comments. So there you go.
Exactly.
And I say that with utmost love and kind of a little, turn of my head at the same time. So there you go.
Yeah, I can feel the love radiating.
Yeah, so much love. All right, and so here's the next thing that I highlighted. In Algeria, Africa, they employed local holy men to cast out demons. And this might be one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. Animal possession in Central Africa was, for a time, very prominent in what is now Malawi. Did I say that right?
Yep, Malawi.
Okay, Malawi. Back in 1891, an old man would lay in the tall grass by the river and pounce upon unsuspecting travelers and mutilate the bodies. During his own testimony, after being captured, he claimed his body had been overtaken by the spirit of a lion. That is something.
How cool is that?
That is cool. I'm sorry. I mean, that's pretty... He was basically a cannibal, so cool. Good for you. But that is pretty cool because he... So he was saying that after he was exorcised, that he realized, oh, well, yeah, I can talk, because he wasn't talking during that whole time. Do you know any more about that story, or is that...
No, he wasn't exorcised. He just accepted that he was...
Oh.
And what's really cool about that to me is that there's a chapter in the Bible, and I'm not a biblical scholar. There's a difference, believe it or not, between biblical scholars and theologians. So I don't know where it is, but it says specifically that the devil will prowl the earth like a lion looking for souls to devour. And I was like, well, here you go.
Whoa. This young man already had he's an old guy. This dude was already taken after old Satan there.
Makes you think.
It kind of does. Either that or just bath salts. 1891 bath salts,
Yeah, right.
Dude, come to Miami. Take care of some problems over there. You say in Madagascar, possessing demons are known as Sakare.
Yeah.
Okay. They appear as fire dragons and torment people for a period of 2 weeks. And after a fortnight, a sword is placed into the hand of the victim as he gyrates and dances, and the entire tribe dances along with the victim until the spirit departs. So the demon just needs a little partay, and he's pacified. I like
right?
that.
And then how many times in the Bible does it talk about the devil being a dragon?
Right.
It's just the imagery is cross-cultural. There is demonology, there's good and there is evil. And I think I brought that up at one of the points that at some point, I think it was the early Hebrews developed the idea of duality, and they were the ones who really pushed for there to be a good and an evil, as opposed to early on the gods were just the gods, and they did what they did, and some of them were bad or did bad things, but weren't necessarily bad.
So this idea, this next thing that I have here, 13th century Marco Polo recorded accounts. This is fascinating. Marco Polo himself recorded accounts of demonic possession in China. The priests were called conjurers, and they played instruments to lure out the demon and into themselves. The demon then demands that 2 sheep be sacrificed to satisfy him, after which the demon departs. But I didn't know that. I had never read that before. Marco Polo actually was writing about demonic possession.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote about everything he saw. At one point, I think he even wrote about seeing orbs at sea.
Really?
Yeah, he wrote about seeing
UFOs. Writing this down. What in the world? See, I love this. I learn something every time.
Yeah, and that was 13th century, but if you look at the sentence before that, it's like 118 BCE, there's an account of possession of a Wu priest, and again in 25 CE. That's before Christianity, 118 BCE.
John Paul, do you know what word they used back in 118 BCE? Did they use the word possession? Or a sickness? Or do you know it? And
I don't know. I would tend to think that they would use sickness or whatever their cultural word is for possession.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can't even comprehend how long ago that was. That's like mind-bending.
It is. It's really mind-bending. And if you go back, and a lot of this information, like I said, comes from the book Demonology, which is the one they read in seminary. And it's written by Michael Fries, SFO. So I want to give him credit for where I get a lot of my information. Also, I did make a few annotations of where I get some of my information. Just because whenever you're writing something, I learned, especially in grad school, you can't just copy people. You can't plagiarize. So a lot of the books a lot of the information I get comes from that Demonology series by Michael Fries. And also Leonard R. Ashley writes a really good book about devils and demons. That's secondary source. So is Demonology, is secondary source work, but it's really good secondary source work. So I just want to give credit where credit's due on that front.
Very cool. And I made notes, so I'll go ahead and I can link those guys. If they have websites or whatever on Amazon, I'll make sure to link that stuff. So if anybody wants to read up more on this. Yeah,
I actually downloaded the audiobook, and I think I was History of Demons Volume 1 is the first part of it. And it goes through everything that I'm talking about. It goes through the history. It doesn't quite go into. I used 3 different books to put together the abridged version. Use a lot more books to put together the actual version. But just this little bit that I sent you, I had to consult 3 different books. And it's funny, when I talked at the beginning about the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley and the gods there, the Anima Elish was one of the first things. It means when on high. My professor at PC, he edited that book. It's called, here it is, Readings in Western Religious Thought. And he took all these old readings, like the Anima Elish and the Gilgamesh epic, and he translated them, and then he wrote about them and what they mean to modern day Christianity. And it was really cool. I had him for a professor 3 years at PC.
Oh, really? You had them in person. That's very cool.
Yeah, his name was Patrick Reed, and he was an older guy then. I don't know if he's still around and still kicking, but he was an amazing individual. Just an amazing guy to talk to. His focus was primarily Old Testament stuff, and he was great. I took 3 Old Testament classes just to be part of this guy's classroom.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a great professor, and he did a really good job with this book because he would identify things that I didn't understand and no one understands, with specific names of specific deities. You're like, what the heck is that? And then, he'll tell you exactly what it is and what it means. Like what I said at the beginning, the Babylonian gods, one of, the sweet water. What is sweet water? What does that even mean? Well, it means fresh water, And I said, again, and I'm going to kill myself.
No, you're doing incredible. You're totally fine. No rubber band on the wrist, snap needed.
That's a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Apsu, god of sweet water, which is fresh, and his wife Tiamat, salt water. So the ancient, the Akkadians, who were early Jews and Arabic people, the Sumerians were others. They lived on either side of this valley, and I think they believed that the world was encased in water. And I don't have a map in front of me, and I meant to do it before this episode because they talk about floods in all these stories, all the way up to Genesis. And you say to yourself, at some point, the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley flooded. It did. It had to. And that's where we get these stories from, word of mouth. It doesn't make. It's just too coincidental that there's a flood story in the Gilgamesh epic, which was written in Akkadian, maybe around 1500 BCE, and then in Genesis, which was maybe written around 800 BCE, there's another account of a flood, and it's probably the same flood.
I wonder which. If you had to choose famine, flood, you get the locusts, like the classic ones. What would be the worst? I don't. I think a flood would be pretty good. That would be a nice way to go. I think locusts would suck. Bugs are horrible. Like, I can't stand flies, or if I go to Florida, I get eaten alive by mosquitoes. I can barely stand that. So, dear God, locusts? No thanks.
Isn't there one about frogs falling from the sky? I really hate frogs.
Dude, let's hope they're poisonous frogs. You just go real quick. You just stand outside with your mouth open like, let's do this. Come on.
I don't know why I hate frogs so much. I really don't. I don't know. They freak me the frick out.
You shouldn't say these sorts of things because people will find you somehow and send you frogs. You never know. People are just, yeah.
I remember I was weed whacking once at an old job I had, and this frog just didn't move. It was pretending to hide, and I weed whacked all around it. And then all of a sudden I saw it, and it was the size of, I don't know what it was the size of. It was the size of it was like the size of a basketball. That's what it looked like. It was one of those bullfrogs, and it just sat there hiding. And I literally dropped my weed whacker and ran. I was like, oh my God.
I think I know why you don't like frogs. Because that damn creature that you saw when you were 10, it had the long lips, right? And the football shaped head. And so he's he's not frog looking, but kind of sort of weird with his eyes and his scaly skin and the big, didn't he have long lips and football shaped head? So there you go. That dude screwed you up.
He really did, man.
You're like, no kissing frogs for me for any reason. No licking them for good luck or whatever the heck those sorts of myths and legends are about the frog. I don't know.
You're right. No, I would lick a frog to trip. I would do that.
Yeah, let's hope that's one of the apocalypses that we get. We get trippy toads, man.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Ooh, look at the pretty colors. Okay, sorry. 10 classes of devils and demons according to A. Despina, but you cite Ashley here. Yep. The one on the top just made me grin. Okay, so this is in the top 10 classes. Those who convince old women to attend the witches' Sabbath. I'm grinning why? Okay, so I have a question. Why does it have to be old women? Because, they just categorically look more like a witch. Why couldn't they tempt younger women? Okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Despina was possibly doing this somewhat tongue-in-cheek.
Okay.
In the idea of, old hags and witches and things like that.
Right. But the warts on the nose and the hunchback, the hunchback look. Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's where you go through the list, those in disguise, those who assail saints, those produced by sex with humans, nightmares, familiar spirits, armies, incubi and succubi, poltergeist, and fates. And of course, as you guys have probably figured out, that's where I got the name for these episodes. Okay, also, the other thing I want to ask you about this very last part here. The 9 kinds of devils and demons, and you cite an example of each, like a name of each.
Right.
False gods, example, Beelzebub. Lying spirits, Pytho. But next to creators of tempests and accusers, there's none. So why do we not have a name for either one of those two?
Because they were attributed to several deities.
Okay.
Well, most of these are, right? So false gods, example, Beelzebub. So I guess that's a bad answer, but he didn't give a specific one for that. And I don't know why. Like accusers, none. It could be also his code of just saying like, yeah, they're all accusers, or yeah, they can all do these creators of Tempest.
Oh, okay. Might just be a blanket because that's a very,
right. And maybe he didn't know.
Okay. Well, yeah, right. And that's okay, right? It's okay to say you don't know. I just don't freaking know, so I'm going to write none.
And the other thing too, Shannon, is I want you to pay attention to how many there are. There's 9, which is 333, right? Which is half of 666. So the number 9 had some significance. So I can see him wanting to make it to number 9.
Right.
And just kind of filling in gaps until he gets to number 9.
That's
the one thing I don't want to. The one thing I don't want to gloss over was those who assail saints. Did I talk about Padre Pio last episode?
I remember the name, but I don't remember in what context we talked about.
Because the ones that assail saints would be the clean demons, and I know we mentioned that.
Yes.
There was this famous stigmatist in I think late 19th century, I think, and he was physically assaulted by demons. Physically. It was a case of demonic, not possession, but of infiltration. And they would show up in his bedroom every night and beat the crap out of him.
And because of he was doing what sort of work?
Well, he got the stigmata. He was a priest, and he received the stigmata.
Oh, I missed that part. Okay, he received stigmata.
Right. So
oh my God, that's a whole nother subject that I'm actually surprised that we haven't uttered that word yet until you just said that. Yeah, stigmata. I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, well, he received the stigmata, and he slept in a cell to be pious, and to this day, I don't know where the cell is, but it's in a museum somewhere. You can see the bloody pillow that he slept on, and apparently every night Mary used to come to him and put the pillow under his head after the devils beat the crap out of him. And he used to write correspondence to his buddies, his other his other priests and clergymen, and tell them, like, last night this happened, and last night you won't believe it. Last night they tried to tempt me, or last night they appeared in these horrific forms. And it's interesting because there are several accounts where he claims that Jesus Christ and Mary were there with him in the cell, watching him get beat up by devils and demons. And I think this was a show of piety and a show of suffering, like Christ did on the cross. And it was a sign of, how far will you go? How far are you going to go? And not blaspheme, kind of like the story of Job.
Right.
But whenever the devils would leave, Jesus and Mary would take care of them. So whenever they would come again, he has this one letter where he actually smiles at them before they attack them. They show up in his room late at night, and they're like ready to beat the crap out of him, and he smiles. And he's like, okay, I'm ready.
That's pretty hardcore, man. He's just like, bring it.
Bring it, you know? I mean, it's crazy when I think, and here's another one for you. H.P. Lovecraft, I don't know if you're a fan or not.
I am. I'm not as engrossed as some other people.
Did you know that he's buried here in Rhode Island?
He is? Is he from there?
Yeah, all of his stories are basically rooted out of here, and the whole Cthulhu mythos is like on the east side of Providence and Thayer Street. No, I've been to his grave. Yeah, it's in Swan Point Cemetery on the east side. I've taken a picture of it. I'll send it to you. For some people leave, for some reason, people leave coins on it. I don't know what the significance is of that, but there is currency from all over the world on top of his headstone. And he wrote a story called Pickman's Model. You should read it. It's about this guy who's an artist, and he paints these pictures of demons. And every time someone looks at these pictures, they're just blown away by how unbelievably terrifying they are. And everyone keeps saying it's like doing a still life. That's how real they look. And it turns out he was doing still life. He had this well, that was attached, I don't know, and demons would come up from it, and he would paint them.
Get out of here.
Yes, it's crazy, crazy story by H.P.
Wrote that down. Pickman's Model by H.P. Lovecraft. Okay.
Even though I gave away the ending, spoiler alert.
Well, that's terrifying. Well, sometimes you need to kind of go ahead and put the fish right on the hook, so that's okay.
Right.
Because now I do want to go look at it.
Right. Well, of course. I mean, and his demons were big and bulky and black and tough-skinned and winged and, tails and, typical type of demon you might imagine. But I also want to mention that all that stuff, all the attributes of angels and demons, like wings and how they look, that was picked up over time. That wasn't just okay, we're going to make this up for the Bible. I think I mentioned that at some point. There was in the first century till first to the second and third century, early Christianity, early Catholicism was just an absolute madhouse. You had Jews who were more like 90% Jewish and 10% Catholic, and then you had Jews who converted but still kept some Jewish traditions. You had Ebionites, Gnostics, Marcionites, all these various offshoots. And that's why the Council of Nicaea was created in 425 to get everyone on the same page. Forgive me if I'm going way into theology mode.
Quite all right.
It's quite all right. But a lot of these old books, especially the old Hebrew books, because the Hebrew people are directly linked to the Akkadians. So that's an unbroken line for 2,000 years of oral tradition. And they wrote Genesis, which is why I think the flood story's in there, and from the Gilgamesh epic as well. But they picked up from other religions like Zoroastrianism, and I think that's where they picked up the idea of dualism. And then they picked up this other idea from some religion in, I forget where, but that's where the angels got their wings from, was this different religion. So they kind of mixed and matched from other cultures, and things eventually became a cohesive whole after the Council of Nicaea in 425. So it's just, I just find that stuff really interesting,
So you said that you're not really sure as to why there is coinage and paper monies on top of H.P. Lovecraft's. Is it a grave or a mausoleum of some sort?
No, it's just a headstone.
Huh. Yeah, I wonder what the tie-in is there with that. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I have no idea. I really don't. I thought it was cool. I left a quarter. I mean,
it can't hurt, right?
Maybe someone just did that, and then everyone was like, "Oh, okay."
You're paying him not to see the demons that he drew in his Pickman's model book.
Yeah.
So we've done it again. We're running low on time, but here's the deal. I've already made some notes. Not only do we need to do tarot cards, but I don't know how stigmata hasn't come up yet, but I want to touch a lot on that in episode 3. But if you don't mind, do you mind taking a couple of questions from our listeners?
Yeah, I definitely want to take questions from your listeners.
Before we depart, thank you so much. And next time, for sure,
so do you not want to do
tarot cards now? Yeah, let's wait on that so we have enough time for that.
Just so you know, there's a spread you can do for cards, but there is also a one question, one pick method.
No kidding.
So if you wanted to just randomly ask a question.
That's true. It's been a long time since I've done tarot cards, so. Well, I mean, so refresh, I mean, what sorts of questions do you ask? I mean,
I don't ever ask
is it always
personal
I was just going to say, okay, so it's not personal stuff. It can be like big idea stuff?
Well, that's what the spread is for. Use the spread for big ideas, and then I think you use the one pick things. Like, I use it on some of my clients. Like, one of my clients got back into heroin, and I'll say, like, oh, is this going to be a thing? And I'll just rip a card out of the deck, and based on whatever it says. But the thing is that these all also came from Duplancy. They came from his book. And they're somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and they're all played off to be good. They're all played off to have this hidden knowledge for you to tap into.
So you were asking about the man that he went back into drugs, but that's not considered personal? Because he wasn't asking for himself. Right.
I wanted to know if this guy was getting into drugs and what I could do to stop him. So if I were looking into my own life, I would use a different tarot card deck, and I would say, okay, whatever, I'm really struggling right now. What's going on with my life? And I would use a different tarot card deck, and I would put out the full spread. I wouldn't do that in this case. I would use it to try to answer other people's questions, like, why is so-and-so using drugs again? Or, something to that effect.
I mean, have you used someone else to ask what that was in your room when you were 10, even though we can kind of guess what the heck that was in your room when you were 10, but I mean, have you ever done that sort of thing?
No, but you know what? I'm going to pull a card out right now and see what happens. I can't even pronounce this person's name. It's Beriva.
Beriva?
Beyrevra.
Oh, yeah.
That's the card I just pulled when asking about my demon.
Yes, let's see what that one is.
So let's see what she's all about. I think it's a she.
I think.
All right. Oh, okay. Beriva is entirely an invention of Colin Duplancy.
Oh, that's cool. So he will just admit, like, this one is total just...
Yeah, loosely
fun and malarkey. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Okay.
That's interesting.
So then can we pull another card, or how does this work? Do we have to re-ask the question?
Well, let's see the divination. Beware of allowing fear to overcome logic. Focus on gaining knowledge to conquer fear instead of trying to destroy things we don't understand. So that actually makes sense, because after I saw the demon, I focused on knowledge and got a theology degree to explain what I saw.
Right, as we were saying, it pretty much just lit a fire, didn't it? Okay, so then can we... See, we're not... It always does go back to the self, right? The id and the ego. Can we ask then, were those demons that I saw in the forest when I was a teenager?
Oh, okay.
Those four entities in the woods that day.
Yeah, let's see.
Just for fun and giggles.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
Alright, let's just pull one out and see what happens. Alright, here we go. Meanwhile, I had to take my huge piece of malachite off these things. Wow, another name I can't pronounce. Cacarinolas. Cacrinolas.
Holy cow. Is that another invention of...
Well, let's see. Let me check them out here in the old book. Here he is. Cacarinolas is also well known in demonology texts as, Glycolabos. He is a president of hell who commands 36 legions of demons, according to Duplancy.
Oh.
Which seems to tie together his other two listings of his names. Inspiration was said to know... So this guy is said to know about the past and the future. But his interests lay in discovering the secrets of the mind. He could find his way into the deepest thoughts of friends and foes, and he could use that knowledge to make them love each other or to drive them to murder each other.
Wow.
The truth is, that's not all that supernatural a feat. The better we get to know someone, the more we're able to influence that person's actions. Interesting. However, the power need not be used to bring pain to others. This particular demon could use the knowledge of men's minds to bring them closer together, and so, of course, can we, the divination, meaning focus on learning the secrets of others, but beware of using that knowledge to harm others. So I don't know what that means as far as your, thing. I think for you, we have to do the full spread. I think we have to save that for the other episode.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that I might do that on my own and email it to you.
Okay. Okay, that'd be cool. And we could also do a quote unquote live. I mean, it's not ever live, but we could record it at some point and do another one. Or it would also be interesting if folks would like to send in. It would probably, I'm assuming again, maybe it would work better if you or I had nothing to do with the questions personally, because both of us now have kind of thrown out stuff and we're not really supposed to. But if ahead of time, obviously, you guys are going to hear this episode. If you want to send me your questions, and we will do kind of a live tarot card spread for you guys as questions. So I don't know what you feel about that, John Paul, but that's another idea.
That would be great. And did you have some questions you wanted to ask now from viewers?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I love questions.
So a couple of them I didn't get to from last time, your first episode. Johnny Calderon. He grew up Catholic and had many experiences as a child. He says as he's grown older, he's more agnostic and has had none. He wants to know if you think those experiences as a child were psychotic episodes, or does being a believer in God lead to more incidents?
Yeah, so in our last episode, we covered that being a believer does lead to more incidents. Because if you're an atheist, then that means the devil already has you, according to Catholicism. Whereas if you go to church and you're a regular churchgoer, then that means the devil wants you, especially if you're an evangelist. You're out there trying to get more people to come with you to church. So yes, the closer you are to church, the closer to harm you are. Which is why now, if he is agnostic, then he probably wouldn't be experiencing much, because maybe Satan feels like he's already got him.
Yeah, no need for Ouija boards there, I guess.
Probably what he doesn't want to hear. But that's just, he said he was Catholic, so I'm giving the Catholic point of view.
Right. All right, next one is from Sean Kevin Jason, and that is my stepbrother, and he's got that old Black Triangle UFOs page, on Facebook, so make sure you guys check that out. He saw the Black Triangle on the ET Highway out by Rachel. And of course he's totally fine with saying, yeah, it definitely may have been ours. I mean, I'm in the same boat with him, so, but he did see it, and it was, obviously quite, left an impression on him. So here's his question for you, John Paul. He's also seen what he calls a werewolf. He just has no other way of describing it. And again, I need to hear this whole story. I have not, but this is on the thread for your questions. Right. The werewolf I saw had large, almond-shaped, glowing red eyes. Before even seeing it, I felt its presence and knew something was wrong. Just this evil feeling unlike anything I've ever felt. It's the most scared I've ever been. The questions are glowing red eyes common with demonic creatures? Would you consider a werewolf with glowing red eyes demonic? And have others reported a similar creature? So I guess the glowing red eyes is really the thesis there.
Yeah, so glowing red eyes is, like I said, about 90% of when people talk about demons, they talk about them being shadow people. And of that 90%, probably another 90% say they have glowing red eyes. So I would say yes, definitely. Glowing red eyes is a signature sign of demons. I would also say, zoanthropy, kind of like lycanthropy, people believing to be animals or possessed by animal spirits. That's not usually demonic because it's a permanent state. So if someone saw a werewolf, for example, werewolves are different because they can change back and forth. Dogman, for example, that would be a permanent state. That would be a case of zoanthropy. But also animism, which Doesn't necessarily actually pertain to this question. So I would say, yeah, glowing red eyes is a definite sign of demonic activity. And the fact that you can see it before you see it is another kind of telltale sign. I've heard scientific people describe that as our sixth sense is real, because when we were, cavemen, we needed to kind of be aware of what was behind us, and we didn't have eyes in the back of our head, so we developed the sixth sense to determine that. And I can see a demon manipulating a sixth sense just like they do our other senses. So demons evoke smells, they evoke visions, they can touch you and do different things. So
they basically they're just getting a kick out of scaring the crap out of you before they really scare the crap out of you, basically.
Well, that's the whole point. They need to get you into a point of, like I said, there's demonic like infestation and oppression, and then, different types of oppression and different types of possession. And, this all happens in succession. And, something like that, sounds like, some type of oppression, really. It sounds like oppression to me. Demonic oppression. It sounds like maybe, and what'd you say was your brother-in-law?
Well, he's my ex-stepbrother.
Your ex-stepbrother.
Yeah.
So he may have some deep-seated fear of werewolves or wolves in general.
He just decided to take that form. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts then on, and I like that Sean uses the term werewolf, because when I say the word dog man, I just want to burst out laughing. For some reason, I get that a dog man is inherently a dog man, right? Like what they're saying is, it was born a little tiny dog man and grew up to be a big dog man, and a werewolf is more like Michael Jackson turning from a human into a wolf. I get it. But the term dog man, it just curdles my blood for some reason. I hate that term as dog man. It makes us sound like fools. But what's your thoughts then on most of these? Oh yeah, I know, right? I'm like, what are your thoughts on the whole werewolf dog man? You have to like puke it out. With most of these sightings, I mean, I know that you listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know if you listen to the werewolf dog man specific podcast where they deal with that, and you get kind of like a profile across the board. But what are some of your thoughts on those kind of creatures? Because there are credible people seeing what looks like a freaking, 10-foot tall werewolf, and it's got the backward legs and the elongated snout, and they're like, that wasn't a Bigfoot.
And recently I was listening to Derek's show, Monsters Among Us, and he had this woman on who was talking about seeing like a giant insect.
Oh, I listened to that as well. Like, what in the world?
And he had on, in season 1, he had someone who saw a dog man, but it was the opposite.
Right.
It was like a golden retriever that had a human face. It was so friggin' ridiculously
That would be
horrifying.
Way worse than anything I have talked about for the entire life of Into the Fray. I'm sorry. That is disgusting, right?
Go find it. It's in his first season, in one of his first episodes.
Oh, I remember that one. You
do, right.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's disgusting. Yes. Yeah, like a human with a, no. That is the biggest no list I've ever heard, top of, period.
But as far as your question is concerned, so things like lycanthropy, they're all, they're so like witchcraft, right? Witchcraft is directly tied to the devil, according to certain religions. Lycanthropy, same thing. The first werewolf, I think we may have talked about this, Peter Stump, I think his name was, said that the devil gave him a belt that allowed him to turn into a wolf by night. So anything unnatural like that's meant to scare you, could potentially have demonic roots.
Okay.
So I think that, there have been some credible dogman witnesses. Yeah. there have been some pretty ridiculous ones as well, but the credible ones...
and a couple of them have, I know that a couple of them have finally been proven to just be complete stories, which we have that across the board for all cryptids.
And one, I remember listening to, the popular podcast there, and the guy was talking about how the thing was running next to his car, and he could hear its nails clacking on the cement, and the guy was crying while he was telling the story.
Oh, jeez.
And he was saying how he was going like 35, 40, and it was running, and it was toenails were clacking, and it was reaching in the car after him. And I'm like, this, and the guy sounded like he was in his 60s, and he was bawling his eyes out telling the story.
Right, and it probably happened when he was in his, 30s or 20s, and he's still bawling? I would.
Yeah. Right, and he was afraid to go too fast because he didn't want to lose control around the corner. It was like a big corner, and it's... I mean... for me to believe, I guess this is the heart of the question. For me to believe that there is werewolves or an upright canine walking around in the woods and it's just living there, like maybe Bigfoot just kind of existing, or is this thing a demon? To me, the demon actually makes more sense logically, because theology is logic. It's philosophy is the first science. Theology is the sacred science. So it's science, and I think it makes more sense that if werewolves existed, they would be demonic in nature.
Well, and here's the thing. The two of us are talking right now, and we've had one instance, and in mine, yes, I saw 4 and you saw 1, but yours counted like 20 disgusting things, by the way. Yours is way more terrifying. But, let's just say, they're cut of the same cloth. I am hazarding to say that, but I feel comfortable saying that they are cut from the same cloth somehow, some way. Why couldn't it just go, hey, today I feel like just looking like a damn werewolf? I like Thriller. I like the FX from Thriller. So today, I'm going to be MJ after he changes. And that's what he is today. Why not, right? And I'm not saying that Dogman is a crazy thing. I'm just saying I don't like that term. That's all I'm saying. I know that there are credible people that are seeing these things. The whole golden retriever with a human face sounds more like something out of the damn Fly movie.
Yeah,
and that is, what episode was that? I have to try to find that and link that so people can hear that, because it was disturbing. Sure. Yeah, it was season 1.
So disturbing.
Oh my God.
I don't want to see that. I would rather see, I don't know, like I said, I'd rather see Satan.
He'd have an intelligent conversation instead of making you want to pull your eyeballs out because it's a freaking golden retriever with a human face. Nope.
They can't talk to you. Now, here's the other thing that they're meant to be. So if there's good and evil in the world, okay, and Satan is in charge of evil, and before all this, actually, the Jews believed that God was responsible for evil. He was the one who sent the serpent. He was the one who sent Saul to be possessed. He was the one who allowed Job to be tormented. So God was not nice, the God of the Old Testament. And the God of the New Testament now has the adversary, the Satan. So possibly, right, if they are all cut of the same cloth, these things are demons in their own way. So throw out Colin DePlancy's book altogether, okay? And throw out all these names and all these different things. Perhaps all this other stuff that we're seeing, these werewolves, these giant praying mantises, these golden retrievers with human faces, perhaps these are the real demons. Not the ones in Colin DePlancy's book. But perhaps these are the real demons, and they're fouled up, or they're made from our imaginations. So if the devil has the power and the ancient knowledge of the angels, which he does, then he knows our fears. He knows all of our fears, and he knows exactly where to pick and prod at us.
Does a demon even know its true form? Does it even know what it really looks like?
I don't think so. I don't think it has a true form. I think that its earthly form would be a shadow person. But I think that, like I said, though, I think that they are walking the earth with us, and I think they're either in disguise or they're invisible. Like I said, that was the theory, because the theory is that hell is going to open up after the apocalypse, or it's already opened up. So there's two ways to look at it, theologically. So if it hasn't opened up yet, that means they are among us. So when you take into consideration, like the email that guy sent me of the dude disappearing in the coffee shop,
yeah,
could that guy be a demon? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I mean, these people, I mean, this giant insect, could that be some form of a demon? Yeah, I don't see why not. It's terrifying. I mean, that's the point of all of this. You know, it changes. The devil, if anything, would want to change your perception of reality. And if you saw a giant praying mantis, your perception of reality would change significantly. And you would focus on that instead of focusing on going to church.
Well, see, and this is why, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before I lose the thought, it's something else for our next installment. And this is going like way deep, like really deep stuff with the whole alien abduction thing, but I can't help tie it in because it gets tied in a lot. The whole idea of all of these, and they call them screen memories anyway, but what if the entire thing is a screen memory and you just have demons in your house and they're putting things in your skin, and those are real, right? Like they find the implants and those are real, but you didn't get them in a ship. It's just some demon got into your house, you know, some football-headed freaking frog-lipped demon came in and put something in your arm or leg. And what if the whole thing is just BS and it wants you to think that it's just messing with you, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's just like wanting to warp your mind.
It wants to push you away from God. Yeah. That's the whole idea of Satan. So if your mind is caught up on this football-headed demon, or this thing in your arm, or this thing in the sky, or this golden retriever human, then you're not thinking about, or maybe you would run to the nearest church.
No, you're right, though, because it would be extremely polarizing. It would be either there's no way I'm making 2 o'clock mass, or it's like, it's 1 o'clock, let's leave now, so we get there on time, period.
Or it would be, why did God let this happen to me? God doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, and that would be exactly what in the Catholic version of Satan would want.
Right, and that's where my mind is starting to just dive down the rabbit hole with this whole thing. I'm like thinking, you know what, there's a whole episode right there. And, you know, we could bring up certain cases and, serious years-long experiences where I know that these poor people they're going through something, period. This is not all just incredible, you know, your mind just going off for years and shoving things into your skin or into your lungs. I just heard an account where some lady had something in her lungs. I'm sorry. She didn't put that in her lungs, folks. Like some of these things are real and they are proven to happen. So what if it is all the same thing? Right.
And it goes to your second, the penultimate podcast that you did, of the gamut there. A lot of those are talking about demons. People always bring it up. I don't know what I saw. Maybe it was a demon.
Right.
So it's in people's minds, and that's the whole point from a Catholic perspective. But I do want to mention something before we wrap up, because I know we're getting close to the end. And this is important. So, you know, we talked about demonology and good and evil being there from the beginning. Okay, so 5,000 years ago in the cradle of life, it was there. Okay, Apsu and Tiamat, they created these other gods, and Tiamat, the mother, wanted to kill the younger gods. I don't know why, she just wanted to kill them. So there you go, here we go, it begins. But fast forward, right? So René Descartes, you've heard of him, right?
No.
Okay, so he's a famous philosopher. Isaac Newton, you've heard of him, right?
Yes.
So Isaac Newton and René Descartes, our entire foundation of society, according to Fritz Capra, who was a German poet, philosopher, he was an amazing guy. He wrote this book called The Turning Point. He says our entire culture is based upon the discoveries of René Descartes and Isaac Newton, Newtonian reductionism and Cartesian dualism. So Cartesian dualism, Rene Descartes is the guy responsible for separating the mind from the body. Right? He came up with this idea that the mind and the body are two separate things, and that lives on today. And Isaac Newton, of course, was a reductionist. So that's why we have a skin doctor and a foot doctor and a lung doctor and a head doctor instead of just a holistic doctor, which the holistic movement is gaining some traction. I will give it that. But in the past, this is how things work. My point of all of this is Rene Descartes basically proved the idea of the parallel dimension, right? So think about this. Your brain in your head, your physical brain, can affect things around you, okay? So you can pick up a stapler, you can pick up a cigarette. Now, just like your brain in your head can affect your physical environment, your mind can affect your metaphysical environment. So Rene Descartes was responsible for more or less creating a metaphysical environment. The idea that yellow, the color yellow, you cannot describe the color yellow without pointing to something yellow. You cannot describe 1 + 1 = 2 without putting two oranges next to each other. But the yellow in the numbers actually exist in the metaphysical realm. They take up space, and your mind can affect them. So my whole point of this little philosophy lecture here is that there is a metaphysical realm, and there is a physical realm. And if demons exist between, or they can bounce back and forth, then they can potentially have control over our mind and our body. And it can affect both. And in that sense, do people see giant insects? Or is that something projected on their mind from the metaphysical realm? You know what I'm saying?
That's pretty deep right there. You went deep like I did with the alien abduction stuff. I like it.
Yeah. So, it's important, I think, to consider that this whole idea, and you hear people talk about it all the time. There's friggin' bumper stickers about it. Mind, body, spirit, mind, body, spirit. Every time I see one of those, I want to rip it off someone's car. And I want to say, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about, you idiot. Mind, body, spirit. What does that mean? I want to point at them. What does that mean? And they're not going to...
I don't think most of them could explain it.
No, mind, body, spirit. You can't explain. The only way you can explain it is the way I just did. Is that your mind affects the metaphysical realm like your brain affects the physical realm. And look up Rene Descartes in some of his readings, and they're phenomenal. He's the father, one of the fathers of Western thought, for God's sakes.
Do you listen to the show OK Talk? With Clint Granberry? He's been on the show before. I've mentioned him.
No, I've never heard of it.
I'll have to send you. I'm going to ask him when we get off the call. There was a lot of time. So he's at an actual studio in Dallas, like a legit radio studio. And they have like the call board. And that's what my background picture is on Facebook, is his studio. That's not my studio, everybody. Everyone's like, oh, sweet digs. I'm like, I wish. That's just he has just my End of the Fray website up in his studio, people.
Cool.
So anyhow, he does call-ins for like a legitimate political show or something, and he'll take a call and he's like, oh, so-and-so's off the air, but hey, I'm doing an off-the-air poll. What do you think about Bigfoot? And he gets a guy, and he'll record this for OK Talk, and I'll find that actual episode because you'll die laughing, but he gets this guy on the phone, and he's like, what do you think about Bigfoot? And the guy's like, oh, he's probably a demon. And he goes through an entire list. It's a whole thing, and I won't even try to emulate it because I'll mess it up terribly. But at one of the end parts, and I just will never forget it, Clint's like, well, what about the dinosaurs, man? And the guy's like, animals possessed by demons. I was like, what? Dude is dead serious when he's talking about these demons. And, he went through Bill Clinton, and he's like, Clint's just naming names, and dude's like, probably demons. So now it's become almost like a hashtag for, OK Talk. It's probably demons. I'll find that and send it to you just for a laugh because it's funny. But
that sounds funny.
Yeah, it's pretty darn good. All right, so we have a good basis.
It's all fun and games until you lose an eye, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they actually had he and Matt actually had something really strange sent. That's what I was laughing about your whole toad things. I was like, watch what you say, because people send you stuff, and they had a box full of like dirt, and I can't remember what was all in that box, but he opened it on the air, and they're like, what the hell is in this box? It was supposed to be dirt from some mound somewhere, and he's like, great, now I'm freaking cursed. I'm touching this dirt. God knows where it's from. That's the scary thing about, when you're recording stuff and you think you're just saying things, but people are like, oh, I can really mess with this person right here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you just never know. People they're very resourceful, and they have a lot of time on their hands. Let's just put it that way, nicely, right?
And I listen to, like I said, a lot of podcasts like yours. I also listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, like Missing Ari, and that's a really good one. I love the disappearing, people when people vanish, David Paulides type stuff. In one of his books was all about the devils and the details, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it was all about people disappearing where devil was in the name.
Devil was in the name. Something having to do with devils or demons.
Why did he write that book?
Right.
He must, he never says what he believes in, but I would love to get a hold of that guy and find out the religion of everyone in his book. Love to.
It would be interesting. He plays everything very close to the chest, and I don't blame him, right? But I do know that some of those cases are super old, and it wouldn't be impossible. It would be a big feat, but
it would be.
That's very interesting. Like, maybe people are going to these certain places for a certain reason because of personal beliefs, right? Is what you're getting at. Right. So that's an interesting point. Okay, so for next time, here's what I have jotted down. Okay, stigmata. Consciousness now. I think that would be pretty smart to talk about, pun intended. We'll do another tarot card round. So this is the call to action for everybody if you want to be included in the next tarot card round. We'll do like the whole spread, and I think it would be a little bit better of an idea if we didn't include any of our stuff. Like you said on the onset, and we did it anyway.
Right.
But for next time, hope you guys can email me or message me on Facebook or Instagram, whatever social media site you prefer. And then, of course, the whole alien abduction scenario, which I think will be a really good portion of it. That's a rabbit hole, can of worms, whatever you want to call it, that we can easily cover a lot of ground there and tie that in. Not that we're going to try to, but there's a lot of parallels there, and you cannot deny it.
Right. And before we end, I do want to mention that my Facebook page is up and running.
Yes, I had that jotted down. I meant to mention that on the onset. I tried to do a segue, like, what have you been up to lately? And I totally just let it go. I didn't even go back to that. Sorry. So your Facebook page, Rhode Island Demonological Society, let me spit that one out, is on Facebook. So go like and share and be part of that page. So besides this one email, John Paul, what's been going on with the book? I mean, are you gonna be as patient as possible to see if you can get some more original stories in?
Yeah, I'm totally patient. Okay. Like I said, I am a perfectionist when it comes to this stuff. I know as a writer you should never edit your own work, but I edit my own work and then I send it to an editor.
I didn't know they said that. That's what they say?
Yeah, they say you never edit your own work. Because it's, personally, I think it's just, I don't know, elitist. Like, I can do this too. They're two separate things, editing and writing. But, so the history and the lead up and all that stuff that's being written currently. And then the stories, I'm going to be as patient as possible because, like I said, this isn't something that needs to come out tomorrow. I want to get really, really good stories. My hope, my dream is that someone contacts me from like 2 hours away and says, the Vatican proved an exorcism on my 7-year-old daughter. Why don't you head on up here for the weekend and we'll talk about it? That's what I want to happen. And I will bring my recorder and my notebook and I will sit down with these people and I will talk to them, and like that's the type of stuff I'm looking for. And look, and even if it was in California, I would talk over the phone. I may start up like a GoFundMe type deal, just for travel money. So I can, like, if someone calls me up from California and says I was possessed and I was, exorcised, I want to go out there and visit them instead of, seeing them talking to them over Skype or something like that. So, I really, really want this to be something good. I want this to be something that would be considered as a textbook. I want it to be considered as something they would read in seminary. I want it to be considered as a possible, book for maybe undergraduates who are into theology. Because when I was an undergrad and we talked about, I took a class called Gods, and all we did was talk about gods and the various, mostly the monotheistic gods. But we never talked about demons. And, I don't think there's an academic, book out there that cites primary sources and secondary sources and actually makes an attempt and goes out there and talks to people. I mean, obviously, I would never do a podcast because it sounds like hell to do, but you could do one. You could potentially, if you have.
You could do one.
Right, that's what I mean.
It's a fantastic way to draw things in. I mean, heck, you could do one once a month.
That's true, and just have someone on who is an experiencer and have them tell their story.
It's just a great way to go fishing. That's just the best way to say it. It just is.
You would have to help me though. I don't know the first thing about podcasts.
I would help you in a heartbeat. Yeah, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Believe me.
I have heard you say that.
Yeah, it's true though. It's very true. And I mean, is there a demons podcast out there? I mean, if there was, I'd already probably be listening to it because I find these things fascinating. I really do.
Yeah, me too. I mean, all the podcasts that I listen to have talked about demons, but they've all talked about either the movies or Duplanty's book and how to summon these demons, which is all fake. I like the various podcasts, and I don't want to mention them on your show because. Oh,
I don't mind. I never mind that at all. I'm a big I embracer and I love hearing what other people are listening to, and I think that it's good for my listeners to get another bug in the ear. I love Derek's show. I love Monsters Among Us, but he doesn't do interviews. But I was thinking about calling him and telling him my football-headed monster story. He would. I know for a fact that. Would that story not fit perfectly on that show?
I think it would.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
I do have his number written down.
I was just gonna say, don't make me message him and go, if John Paul Capice doesn't call you within a week, let me know.
I will get.
I will give him hell.
But also, expanded perspectives, blurry photos. And Blurry Photos did a whole thing on demonology, and it was basically Duplanty's book.
Right.
And they're hysterical, those two. And they went online and they found these guys who were, this is how you summon a demon, and it's all bullcrap.
Right, but it's funny to listen to.
Oh, it's hysterical to listen to. You're summoning someone dreamt up.
Yeah, you're like, pluck the left eye out of fish head and swallow it whole at 12 past 3. You're like, what in the world?
Mix some Eye of Newt with some toad.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, besides those, obviously Mysterious Universe, and I think, I don't know if all these places have done, all these podcasts have done shows on demonology.
Well, but, I mean, that's the thing. I'm sure that they have, but I don't think that there is a specific show about demons or possession, right?
You're right.
Oppression, like just very specific. Like any of us can.
Oh, you're gonna get me into
I'm just saying, dude. It's the best way to. I mean, look, you are writing a book, right? So. Right. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like, honest to God, like, you could do it once a month or you could do it bi-weekly. Sometimes, like, I think I've told Ryan this too. I'm like, I sometimes fantasize about going to bi-weekly because I'm thinking it amplifies your time slots.
Right.
And your editing time. Bi-weekly is it's a slog. I love it. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's a lot of work.
No, but you see, I mean, you must be crazy busy in order to get what you get on the air. And,
I mean, it's a lot. I love it, but I get to talk to people like you, and I learn something new every single week. And sometimes I learn something before I even talk to somebody. Like you sent me this beautiful 2-part email today. And I'm like highlighting things. I'm like, this is so cool, and this is why I do the show.
I'm glad you like the email because there's a lot of information in there. And if I were you, I would, really take some of that stuff in because, that'll show you that this is not a Catholic phenomenon. This isn't for people who are, when they hear me talk demons, turn off the podcast. That's not the idea. The idea is that this has been around forever. There's this concept of evil, and all of a sudden, evil has been personified about 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, we're talking about, what was your first part? Let's see, recorded history is accepted it began around 3000 BCE. And then the first creation of a myth is 2000 BCE. That's ridiculous, folks. So this goes way beyond like, oh, John Paul is walking out of the Vatican, like, flying the Catholic flag. This is way beyond that. So that's what we're trying to just kind of say through the whole thing.
They just absorbed it into whatever they wanted it to be.
Right, which is normal. That's what we do as people, form things into our reality and what we have in front of our face and our beliefs. That's what we do as people.
And hey, look, I got a client of mine is Muslim, and we talk about jinn all the time. And,
see, oh boy, that's going on the list. Boom, love the jinn. Pep, pep, pep. That's going on the list for next time too. There you go. I want to hear if you're okay with it. Just, some of the stuff that you guys talk about with Jen and what his beliefs are, I find that extremely fascinating. So that is on the list for next time as well.
Yeah, I will tell you right off the bat, the jinn are not bad like demons.
They're not? I thought they hated us human beings with all their fibers of being.
No, according to him, they are just another entity. There's angels and that were made of whatever. Then there's us made of clay and jinn made of fire, and they exist in a realm next to ours. But they don't hate us like they're not controlled by Satan, which is interesting because Satan is in the Quran, right? Satan has no relationship to the jinn. It's not like he controls them. They're just another race of beings.
See, that actually makes it even more fascinating because that means that kind of took my way of thinking about Jen and just smashed it on the floor, which makes it even better because now I'm going to have 1,000 more questions for you. Good luck. Like the man from Taken. Good luck. Okay, so next time, Stigmata, Consciousness, Jen, tarot card, questions, send those in, people, and alien abduction. Okay, also, can people get a hold of you or message you, whether it be, hey, I heard you on that show, and here's a question, or here's my story, come see me, which would be amazing. That's the ultimate goal, right? Can they get a hold of you also through Facebook, and you need to plug your email address?
Yeah, so they can get a hold of me through Facebook, and my email address is... Oh, God, right here. My email address is livedeep.no.truth@gmail.com. So livedeepnotruth@gmail.com, separated by periods. Live, period, deep, period, no, period, truth@gmail.com. Or message me on Facebook.
Yes, the Facebook group, or I mean, not the group, it's a page. Rhode Island Demonological Society, and it's Live Deep No, like not. Oh no, it's KNOW. Okay.
Live deep, no truth.
No truth. What? There's no truth here. Live deep, no truth. No. Okay. Good. We have the laundry list checked off, and we added some more goodies. So. And
please send anything. You want to ask me a question? Ask me a question. You want to tell me a story? Tell me a story. You want to tell me I'm full of shit? Sorry to swear.
Hey, you know what? We went 2 hours and 8 minutes without it. One S word. We're doing pretty good, people. Give us some pats on the back.
Just give me everything you got so I can start putting pieces together. And, that's the whole point of the website. I'm a little nervous that people can see. I don't want my friends to know I'm doing this. I don't want the people I work for to know that I'm on there. But I think I do have it set to private. But I want to. This is not meant to be a place where devil worshippers come and are like, right on, man. Yeah. Rhode Island Demonological Society. Let's go out in the woods naked and have sex.
Sacrifice time. Black capes. Just bring your black cape, man. That's all you need. Just your black cape.
I don't want to do that. I'm not. This not what this is about. Yeah. This is an academic page, is what this is. Yeah. I want truthful accounts of witnesses to paranormal religious, unexplained religious phenomenon. That's what I want.
And stigmata can be included, which we will talk about next time.
If you have had the stigmata, please call me or contact me.
Yeah, you're like, sweet Lord, yes. That is absolutely on the list. Yeah. I mean, then I'm not poking fun, pun intended. But I mean, that would be epic to get one of those kind of accounts. Is that more, I'm sorry, I keep going with my questions. My God, what's wrong with me? What's more rare? I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. Is stigmata more rare than an actual demon possession?
That's a good question, actually. My gut reaction says stigmata is more rare.
Yeah, that would be. That's what I was thinking too, but I don't know.
But then again, there's no documentation of either. I would imagine if someone showed up to their church and said, I have the mark of the stigmata, they'd be whisked away to the Vatican.
Right. Like, cover that fool with a blanket now. Right. See, and that's damn frustrating.
It is.
That we will never, probably ever know exactly how many cases of demon possession, actual exorcism, stigmata, these incredible accounts and incidents, we will never know how many there are.
And what makes it even worse is if Jesus Christ himself came down from heaven and walked on water into the nearest police station and said he was Jesus Christ, they'd lock him up.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
They're like, dude, sweet beard and long hair, but get your butt in that there cell right now.
And even if he manifested outside of the cell, they'd be like, "How'd you break out?"
Yeah. Hey, Billy, you didn't lock the cell again.
Right. This Jesus escaped.
Like this freaking guy.
I don't know if you watched that show, American Gods.
No, I never watched it.
You gotta watch it. It's fantastic. It shows how every god was brought to America. Like Egyptian settlers brought some of the Egyptian gods. And it was actually Mexican immigrants that brought Jesus over, according to this guy's book, which was turned into a show. And it's amazing because he's helping these people cross the border. He's among this group of people that cross the border. And at one point, they come to a river, and this guy's drowning, and he walks on water to save the guy drowning. And then as soon as they get to the other side of the river, these Minutemen gun them down, and they actually shoot Jesus.
And Jesus dies?
Yeah.
Isn't he not? I mean, well, he